chapter 1 is a pretty quick chapter. Remember, this is the history and a little bit on careers, and most importantly, the perspectives, the 7 perspectives, okay? So, when did psychology first begin?
1879.
1879, good. Where?
In Germany.
Leipzig, Germany. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Good. And who was the father?
Wilhelm.
Good. What's the mnemonic?
Number 1.
Wilhelm Wundt is number 1. Good job. Okay. All right. So he founded the lab in Germany. And then who was the American guy that founded the lab?
G.
G.
Stanley
Stanley
Hall.
Hall. What year?
1883.
1883. So it was 4 years later. 1883. And which college?
Johns.
Johns Hopkins University. Okay, so first psych lab in the US, Johns Hopkins University, 1883, G. Stanley Hall. He was a
G.
because he not only founded the first psych lab, he also
Psych journal.
the first psych journal and also
Created the APA.
the APA. Okay, so the American Psychological Association. And first psych lab meaning the first psych lab in America. Okay, so who founded structuralism? Wilhelm Wundt, because it was like the very first form of psychology, very kind of basic. All right, so Wilhelm Wundt founded structuralism, and the key word is structure, which means we analyze the parts of consciousness, so like the senses. So, they would drop something and be like, what did you hear? What did you see? Tell us about it. Okay, and it forced them to look within themselves to figure it out. We call that introspection. Good, Kim. Introspection. Okay? Good. Functionalism came after because they were like, what is this structuralism? This doesn't really help us much. So, functionalism, they wanted to study the purpose of consciousness. So, why do we do the things that we do? So this talked more about, mental testing and different things that were a little bit more useful. And it was created by who?
William James.
William James. Okay, what was the mnemonic?
What will the purpose?
James got the funk or something? Or
What will the function be? Right? Was it? What
that was okay. No, that was last year's mnemonic. What was it, Kim?
What will the purpose be?
What will the function be, James?
Yeah.
Do you guys remember that? I forgot it.
I don't remember.
Last year they came up with another one. It was like, who got the funk? James got the funk, like a song. So, James, functionalism. All right, and he admired Darwin. So he believed also in natural selection, which is the idea that good genes that help us survive are the ones that get passed down.
Evolutionary perspective.
Okay. Stream of consciousness. That's very important. So the belief that our thoughts are a continuous flow. Okay, like a stream. All right. So James, that was the idea of James Bay, right? Water, bay is water, so stream.
Yeah.
So that mnemonic, remember. All right, the women. Who was the first woman to get a PhD in Psych?
Mary something.
What did she do with her PhD, guys?
Oh, she
Washburn. So remember the mnemonic, Washburn, she got her PhD in Psych and she was super excited, so she washed it and then she burned it because she was trying to dry it. Okay? And remember Debbie, she got ketchup. Alright, who was the first female president of the APA? Mary Whiten Hawkins. Whiten, White House president. Mary Washington, even though it's Martha. Alright, and then who kind of researched the worth of women? Hollingworth. So what did Hollingworth try to prove?
That men were
women are just as intelligent as men, right? And then as far as children, what did she discover? What term?
Gifted.
Gifted, or she came up with the term gifted. Okay? Good.
Yes.
Here they are. There's Freud.
King.
Stanley Hall, Carl Jung, learn about later. Okay, psychoanalytic perspective or psychoanalytic theory. So who's the main guy? Sigmund Freud. Okay, and what's the icon that I gave you?
Iceberg.
The iceberg. What's below the water?
Subconscious.
The unconscious. What's above? Consciousness. So this whole thing is the idea that the way we behave and the way we feel has to do with our unconscious thoughts and memories and feelings that they're unconscious, so we're not aware of them. Okay, so therapy involves what? Psychoanalysis, which what's the goal?
To put the memories back
To bring all the stuff that's stuck in the unconscious out, so then you can deal with it. Because the idea is if it's stuck there, you don't know what you're dealing with, so you don't know how to deal with it. Okay? Okay, good. What are some keywords? Shout out some keywords related to Freud, or related to psychoanalytic.
Subconscious.
Unconscious, memories, childhood, dreams, hypnosis,
etc.
sex and aggression, remember? Freud was all about sex, okay? You'll learn that later. This is an interesting guy. Freudian slip, good. Okay? Any others? Someone I know did a Freudian slip the other day too. It's funny. They said breast instead of best. That's like a common one. It's typical. All right. Okay. Cool. So, what was the criticism of psychoanalytic theory? It's not concrete. You can't measure it. It's not scientific because how do we measure the unconscious? You can't. So another group of people came along and they said, no, it's important to study what is observable and measurable. What do we call that?
Behavior.
Empirical. Good. So what was the icon? The eye, and it was called behaviorism. Good. Who was the founder of behaviorism?
John B. Watson.
Good. John Behaviorist Watson, right? You might see it without the B though, but John Behaviorist Watson. So before Watson, Pavlov came along and he noticed the whole dog salivation thing. So he was doing the study on animal digestion and how to test to collect the saliva, and he noticed that even when he started walking into the room to feed the dog, after like he had already fed him various times, just the footsteps made the dog already salivate. And so he decided to kind of train the dog, and he paired the meat powder with a bell or tone, and then he noticed that eventually the dog would salivate to the bell, right? So he called this classical conditioning. Good, Carmelita. Classical conditioning. And so Watson was like, whoa, this is so cool. I'm going to do an experiment even further. And he studied little Albert. Okay, and we'll go more in depth with him in chapter 6. But basically, he conditioned him to fear a white rat and other stuff. Skinner is the other guy. He came up with operant conditioning. Again, we'll go over him later too. So, yeah, B.F. Skinner. Okay, I'll give you his mnemonic later because Skinner legend.
B.F. Skinner.
All right.
Skinner legend. You're a really Skinner.
Okay, so nature versus nurture. What do behaviorists argue? It is
Nurture.
That's it. Okay, and remember Watson's famous quote, give me 20 healthy infants and I'll turn them into doctors, whatever, artists, thieves, stuff that he did. I think he said thieves. So just the idea that it doesn't matter how you're born, you can be shaped into anything. That's what behaviorism is all about. Any other terms for behaviorism? Shout them out. Stimulus response. Altruism does not exist according to them because you get something good out of it, right? Environment. Experience. No free will. Good. That's a big one. That was Skinner. No free will. Anything else? We are like animals, so we do testing on animals. Okay, good. So then, what was the reaction to that? We are not animals. We are humans. so humanistic. Good. What's the icon?
Flower.
The flower. We have the potential for
Growth.
Good. What are some other words for humanistic?
Free.
Humans are unique. We're rational.
Optimistic.
We're free. It's optimistic. We're no longer animals. Do they do animal testing? No, because they don't believe it relates. Why test an animal? We're not animals, right? According to humanists. Who are the people? Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow. Good. And again, we'll learn more about them later. Okay, so what's the therapy called? Person or client-centered therapy. They were the first people to refer to, instead of patients, they called them clients because it kind of gave them more power and it didn't feel as helpless, right? A patient is like, sounds like you're sick, it sounds like you're, relying on someone to cure you, right? Okay, person-centered therapy or client-centered therapy. What's the goal? To match your self-concept to reality. Because if there's incongruence, that's how you end up with mental illness, according to humanists. Good. Okay, so then we go back to unobservable mental processes, and we have the cognitive. What's the icon?
The brain.
The brain. Good. Shout out keywords? Think.
Problem solving.
Problem solving.
Mental
processes.
Cognitive development? No, that's a different.
Anything with cognitive, yeah? Thinking patterns, good. Thinking patterns, problem solving, mental processes, those are like the main ones. Okay, the people, Piaget, Herbert Simon, Noam Chomsky. We're gonna learn more about Chomsky and Piaget later, okay? All these people, that's the nice thing about chapter 1 is like, throughout the whole year, we kind of keep hitting back at it. We keep referring back. So chapter 1, you'll have down by the end of the year, easily. You need it for the final too. All right, biological, also known as neurobiological. So what's the icon?
Body to behavior.
Body, behavior, and the arrow going both ways. So our body influences our behavior influences our body. What are some keywords? Brain structure. Biochemical. Nature. Depression could go for any of them though. What do they use to treat depression? Medication, drugs. TMS. They could use surgery for other stuff. Lobotomy, all that stuff. So anything that has to do with the structure of the brain is going to be biological or neurobiological. So a behaviorist would treat, let's say, anxiety or whatever by doing what? Training in some way, right? A cognitive therapist would do what? Change your pattern of thinking, right? A neurobiological therapist, psychiatrist, would give you more serotonin, give you SSRIs, which are?
Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors.
Good. We're going to get to that again in chapter 3. All right, evolutionary. What's the icon? The big bird and the little bird, and who gets the worm?
The big bird.
The big bird. Don't say the early bird. So the big bird gets the worm. So survival of the fittest. Everything we have helps us survive. Anything related to survival is going to be evolutionary. Got it? Good.
Darwinism.
Adaptation, fitness, reproductive fitness, all that is going to be evolutionary. You don't need to know the people for evolutionary. Lastly, sociocultural. What's the icon? The two boy and the girl in different religions. So our behavior is influenced by our society. Give me some examples of what influences our behavior. Religion, age, gender, class, sexuality, sure, all those things. Okay, good. The APA, we're not there yet. What's the most commonly used perspective nowadays? Cognitive. Good. So when people suffer from depression, it really, in therapy, if it's not, medication, medication's also heavily used, but if you go to a psychologist, not a psychiatrist, they're probably gonna work on changing your negative thinking patterns, okay? They might do CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, so changing your negative thinking patterns along with kind of retraining you in a way. What has happened to APA membership in the last 100 years?
It's gone up.
It's gone up a lot. Okay, oh, that was that. Okay, applied versus clinical psych. Which one is research?
Applied.
Applied because you apply your
Research.
research. What's clinical?
Medical.
You get
Yeah.
Diagnosing and
Treat disorders.
treating disorders. Does it have to be medication? No, okay? Clinical psych does not mean psychiatry. It includes psychiatry, but it's not just that. So if you go to a therapist and you go in and you have therapy, that's clinical psych. Okay, if you go in simply to have a test done, that's clinical psych. So anything regarding diagnosis and treatment of disorders, treatment in any way, any kind of therapy, not just drugs. Got it? And how do you remember that? You go to a clinic to get help. Okay, good. All right, where are psychologists employed? A lot of them are private practice. Research areas. Developmental is kind of a big research area. What do you call the one that has to do with like statistics and numbers?
Psychometrics.
Psychometrics, good. What do you call the type of psychology where a company will hire them to maybe make the industrial organizational good, to bring up worker morale or to figure out, the best way of giving bonuses? So industrial organizational good. What do you call the one where they're called for to be expert witnesses to determine if someone, in fact, forensic psychologists, good, to determine if they were legally insane at the time. All right. Okay, so the 7 unifying themes. Psychology is empirical. What does empirical mean again?
Measurable.
Measurable, observable, good. Theoretically diverse, as we've seen, it has various theories. We've gone over 7. It evolves in a socio-historical context. The sociocultural theory kind of goes along with that. Behavior is determined by multiple causes. It's heredity and environment. Who thinks it's all environment? Behavioral. Who thinks it's all hereditary? Biological. Okay, in general. All right. The experience of the world is subjective. That was like all of chapter 4, right? Good. Okay, study habits. When you study a little bit each day, what do you call that?
Distributed practice.
Distributed practice, good. So you study a little bit each day, distributed practice. It's proven to work much more effectively than cramming. Okay? Attendance is important. What do you call, so the fact that I have you guys in the NPR right now, because I know that the majority of you are going to take the test in the NPR, what am I utilizing? State-dependent learning. Where you learn, the conditions you're in while you're learning should match with the conditions you're in while you're testing to achieve the best results. Okay? Good. Okay. We're just going to move straight into chapter 2. Oh, as far as changing your answers, should you change your answer? Generally, research shows that if you have a reasonable reason to believe why you should change it, then you should. But if you're not sure, I wouldn't. Like, if you really don't know, then I wouldn't. Okay, moving